It's another Mock Draft Monday, but first, we're going to talk about CJ Stroud and the Senior Bowl. All that and more on this edition of the Bullpen.
Stroud to throw the punches away. He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Tagged down for a Texan touchdown.
Well, hello and welcome to this edition of the Bullpen. I am James Roy, and with me is Tom Chabria. Tom, how are you doing?
Man, I'm doing really good. Got the intro with CJ and Tank doing the squabble, and I'm not going to steal all the thunder, but there was some squabbling going on today, and it was pretty cool.
CJ Stroud had the whole AFC Pro Bowl team squabbling at one point. It was wild because when they did that, he was the only one not on the field squabbling. That was wild. That leads us into our first topic. CJ Stroud in the Pro Bowl was one goal line, 4th and goal conversion from probably being the offensive MVP of the Pro Bowl. How do you feel about CJ Stroud's performance in the Pro Bowl?
Man, you just dream. Like you watch that and you just dream. All the studs he got to throw to and how exceptional the possibilities could be. When you see Jamar Chase catch an absolute dime in the back of the end zone, or you see Keenan Allen, those two act like they've been playing together for 10 years, just carving up defenses. And you watch that and you're like, the minute they get their hands on one of those studs like that, not to take anything away from Tank or Nico, but I mean, clearly those guys are just a step above. I do believe Nico can get there one day, but Jamar Chase, the way he caught that one ball, it was just like, give me that. Give me all of that.
That was something. Did you hear during that one thing that stuck out to me was he turned to CJ and he said, "Come play with me. Come play with me." But of the two options that CJ was really, hitting for those passes, well, realistically, so he's getting Evan Engram and David Njoku the ball, but of the receivers that he was really getting the ball to, it was Jamar Chase, and then there's Keenan Allen, and Keenan Allen has a more realistic path to being a Texan than any of those other receivers. So I guess just for fun right now, since we're on the topic, how would you feel if you woke up in, March 13th is here and you wake up and the Texans have signed Keenan Allen to play for the team?
I want to start the regular season like the next day. Like I need the new uniforms and them on the field like the next day going to work. Like I'd be to the moon. I mean, obviously, this offense was very dynamic this year. And then to add another weapon for CJ, I would know how to deal with, the excitement. I'd just be ready. I don't know that I'd go out and buy Keenan Allen's jersey right away. Obviously, they got to mix together. But man, I mean, that's a stud. That's an absolute stud. And what that does is allow Tank to be great. It allows Nico to be great. It allows everybody to have to play you straight up. And we've seen it with CJ when he has time and he has the ability to find his man. He makes big things happen all game long.
And we saw that. I mean, we got a sample of that in the Pro Bowl. It's Pro Bowl, granted, it's not like a real game. It's a flag football game. But, I mean, that play that he made to Jamar Chase was incredibly impressive. And it just brings back, everyone knows, anyone who's listened to the show for more than 3 seconds knows how much I love to draw from the Bengals situation. So CJ hitting Jamar Chase in the end zone in the Pro Bowl for that touchdown just really made my day, just because now I can talk about that forever. But looking at all the players that could be leaving the Chargers in the coming free agency period, whether it's by trade or by any way that they will be, there's Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler. Of all of the weapons that could be leaving LA, I think Keenan Allen to me is the most intriguing. I think that he adds in a way to the Texans offense that makes sense to me. Granted, Austin Eckler to an extent based off of positional need for the Texans does make sense, but I just don't know if he's the running back that I want in the backfield that I think just changes the entire levels the playing field and brings this Texans run offense back into prominence. But speaking towards new prospects, kind of rolling into the next topic, the Senior Bowl. The Senior Bowl happened, and what I've noticed, and you might notice it in my mock draft today, is that a lot of players that maybe people weren't tracking are now in this sort of, it was described to me last offseason as this group think that is used by Twitter fandoms of certain teams, where one person that's really well known in that circle says like, oh, who's that one corner from Toledo, Quinyon Mitchell, I think it's Toledo, I can't remember what school he went to. Quinyon Mitchell is the best cornerback in the draft. Someone tweets that, like, say for us, John Crumpler's been talking him up, and all of a sudden, everyone's mock draft in the whole fan base features Quinyon Mitchell for like a whole 3 weeks. So, with that in mind, who's a player that you feel like, looking on Twitter, just from what you've observed, you didn't know about him before, and you might feature them on your mock draft because of what they did in the Senior Bowl?
I haven't necessarily had that player that I've circled going, oh, I want this guy on the Texans. Like you said, Quinyon Mitchell is one that I've seen as well. And then obviously Kool-Aid, McKinstry, the names we kind of talked about on the last show. I mean, I guess as we get closer to it, maybe we'll get more of that. But for me, I guess I haven't done enough homework to be able to go, this is a guy they're talking about, and I want them on the Texans. Right now, I'm still so torn with what free agency could be. It's really, really hard to get excited about the draft, and not how do I put this? Not hard to get excited about it, but hard to get excited about one particular player, because I'm dreaming about some of these free agents. I'm dreaming about some of these trades. Patrick Queen could be out there, and then I'm going, well, that's the secondary guy I want. We talked about Keenan Allen. Well, now I crossed the wide receiver off my list. I mean, Matabuke for Baltimore. For some reason, they don't go that route in Baltimore, and he's out there. I want him on my team too. So as much as I want to get excited about some of these prospects, I feel like I'm tempering my expectations a little bit till I know where the holes are or where they could go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Personally, like our discussion last week on Mock Draft Monday, I at one point in the third we were talking about Malachi. I don't remember his name, but he's out of Western Kentucky, and we were like, oh, 5'10", he's a slot guy. I don't know if that's really what we need. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at all the Senior Bowl stuff, and him and Roman Wilson out of Michigan are both coming up a lot, and I'm like, oh, maybe, obviously we're not experts, so I was like not surprised that as soon as I said that about Malachi, I think it's Malachi Corley. I said that about him, and then immediately I was like, oh, well, wouldn't you figure that I go on social media and all the draft experts are like, Malachi Corley would be perfect on the Texans. That would be a great guy for the Texans to pick up. And I'm just like, oh, okay. Just a quick reminder to myself that I'm not the expert that I think I am when it comes to assessing college level talent for the Texans, and that I tend to let my emotions and biases get in the way. One of these days, I'm going to draft a mock draft that's literally just Texas players. It's just going to be like, Byron Murphy, and then I'll go with like Jonathan Brooks, and then Jatavian Sanders in some order. Some way I get all three of them. I don't think that's likely with the current Texans draft position, but that would be one way to do it. Looking now into our mock drafts, for mock draft Monday, we're gonna be running like 4 rounds today. Once again, no trades, so it's just as they lie. We understand that Nick Caserio would probably just as soon get struck by lightning than not trade any one of the first pick or any of one of his picks in the first 4 rounds of the draft. But here we are, acting like he's not going to do it. So that gives us 2 extra picks because there's 2 4th-round picks currently for the Texans. And this week we figured out the technology. So for those of you that are watching, you'll be able to see Tom do his mock draft because we worked through that. And it was quite the journey, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were definitely trial and error for a little bit.
We were, but it's okay. We figured it out. So I'm going to bring up my mock draft right here. We're just going to go ahead and get started. 4 rounds. I'm going to do warp speed so that I don't need to see what everyone else is picking. I'll just figure it out when I get there. I'm going to set trades to off. And for the randomness factor, I'm going to stick with what it has here, which is 2. I'm going to select the Texans, and then we're ready to enter the draft. Let's do it. I'm going to get it started. Wow. I am just... So my general trend... So for those of you that don't see it, I have like an offensive tackle, Amarius Mims, Keon Coleman, Jordan Morgan at OT, Troy Franklin, and then Kamari Lassiter are like the top 5 guys. Personally, I'm not super huge on. Oh wait, and Brian Thomas is there. Nice. I'm not super huge on taking a wide receiver with this pick for the Texans, and with that, I feel like the only other option really is to go in the secondary. I commonly would prefer to get one of the Alabama cornerbacks if they're still there, or maybe that Cooper DeJean guy from Iowa. But Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia is someone who last week didn't know much about, did a little more research on. I feel comfortable going with Kamari Lassiter with this first pick, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go ahead and lock it in. I think it's important. I don't know. What do you think of that pick, Tom? I'm gonna bring your mock draft up while we're at it.
I love it. I mean, obviously, we feel that D'Amico's going to really focus on the defensive side of the football with maybe some of the draft picks or maybe the free agency stuff. It's yet to be determined, but I don't see him not going with a defender in the first 2 rounds at least. So for you to take the corner, I think that's a good pick. On my board, I have Terrion Arnold here available to me, but I also have Keon Coleman, who seems like would be a good fit. And since you went the corner, I think I want to go the wide receiver. As much as I would like to see them draft a corner and go get a wide receiver, I feel like it might be easier to draft the wide receiver if you're trying to spend the money on the defensive side of the ball, on edge or corner or secondary, whatever. So with that guy being available there, I think that's a good pick. What do you think?
I mean, I think that wide receiver is not a bad route to go. You know, I've already brought it up on this episode, so I don't even need to go into it with the Bengals situation. So I'll never be against adding fuel to the fire. One of the people that I follow on Texans Twitter, Dr. Corey Barrett, I think put it pretty well. I'm paraphrasing here because it's been hours since I read this tweet. But in today's league, with what it takes from an offensive perspective, this team, the Texans, put up 20 points in only 8 of the games they played. You got to score more than 20 points in just about any game you play to win. It's very rare that you don't score more than 20 points and win a football game with the way that passing has taken over the league. So I'll never fault the Texans for doing that. Keeping in mind that DeMeco Ryans is a defensive-minded coach and looking at what is happening to that secondary, I think the 2 biggest issues that you have are the Texans' run game offensively and the Texans' secondary defensively. So if you address either one of those, I think that you're in good shape. But that being said, a first-round pick spent on making C.J. Stroud's weapons, or upgrading C.J. Stroud's weapons is not wasted. So I don't think it's a bad pick, no doubt. But let's see, I'm going to switch over now to mine. I am at the 59th pick in the second round, and I already pretty much know what I want to do, but I'm going to talk through it for a second. We've got an O tackle, center, and then there's an edge, Brandon Dorless out of Oregon. And then we get to the pick that I'm probably going to make, which is Jatavian Sanders. So in this mock draft, and I'm going to put one out. If you're listening to this, it's already out on Twitter on Monday. That's like my mock draft 3.0. And in this, I do take Jatavian Sanders. And the reason for it is that, one, he's the second best tight end in this draft. And, having watched him play at Texas, he's a great blocker, and he can catch the ball. So I think he's got a good mix of both. I think he's a good fit to replace Dalton Schultz, because this mock draft would be assuming that Dalton Schultz does not get re-signed. And I think that at the end of the day, you want to go for what we had in Dalton Schultz is nice, and if the Texans re-sign him, I'll be good with it. But I think that Jatavian Sanders, with the right mentoring and coaching, could develop into something maybe a little bit better than Dalton Schultz. So, and at worst case, Jatavian Sanders is just a Dalton Schultz that can block. So with that, I mean, I that's where I'm going to go with it. I don't know. How do you feel about that pick, Tom?
I think it's a great pick. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that tight end isn't something they need to draft. I'm kind of hoping that they bring the guys back, Brevin Jordan, Dalton Schultz, and then you're kind of good to go. Or if you have to, you go get a tight end on the cheap so you can really focus with these high draft picks to get impact players on either, like we talked about with the defensive side of the ball, or a wide receiver. I can't see him drafting a running back, but some people think maybe you draft a running back. So I feel like tight end would be nice. It wouldn't be bad. It's just I would kind of hope that they don't have to do it. That's just my take.
No, yeah. I mean, 100%. That makes sense. Now, I've pulled up your mock draft, so let's go ahead and check and see where you're at in the second round.
See, so I luck out. Like if you base on their rankings, they have TJ Tampa here as the 38th best prospect, and this is at number 59. So you know what I mean. You're not reaching, and you're filling a position of need. Obviously, there's other guys in here. Kalen King, which is another corner if we wanted to go that route. Byron Murphy, who I saw at Texas, so I like, is there. D lineman.
What is Byron Murphy's rank?
40.
Yeah. Wow. They must have got you messed up randomly. That's wild.
What do you mean? This is just the way it worked out. We lucked out.
I mean, it's really good for you. I'm happy for you. That is wild. That is insane. The talent that you've got to pick from this mock draft.
Yep.
Where are you leaning? What do you think you want to fill? So you went wide receiver first round. So based on what you said earlier, I mean, I feel like you have to go DT or corner.
So my hope, and I did this kind of, I guess, with this in mind. Like, so you take Keon Coleman because he's been popping a little bit in some of the Senior Bowl stuff, or some of the stuff building up to the draft, that kind of deal. And then you're able to take the best available. And if he fills a position of need, great. If not, you've got depth somewhere. And I just lucked out. Like, I've got my pick of the litter on corner here. I've got a couple edge rushers, D linemen. So for me, I would probably take TJ Tampa just because we've talked about corner at length. We think that corner is a position that they're going to look to fill because we know Nelson's not going to come back. That's where my lean is, unless you can talk me off of it. If Byron Murphy's there, do you need to take him?
I feel like, so the amount of times that I've run this simulator, Byron Murphy's never made it past like where he's ranked. So like
I never had a shot at him.
So it's tough, and we've had this discussion, especially leading into the playoff game against the Browns, where you look at the fact that yes, having Stingley shadow Amari Cooper impacted Joe Flacco's ability to find him, but even more so was the lack of pass rush in the first time the Texans played the Browns played as much of a role in that, and so getting a pass rush on Joe Flacco in the playoffs is really a huge part of it. So you're solving one problem or the other by making those picks. So if it's really just a matter of, do you think that Byron Murphy as a DT prospect is better, or is like your relative gain at the defensive tackle position, is it that it as more than you would gain from getting TJ Tampa at the cornerback position? And so that's really where you're at. And we also talked at length about the ability to go best player available. So the Texans have kind of put themselves in that position and can, continue to do that by having a good free agency. And so since we don't know what they would do, I mean, are you trying to re-sign Steven Nelson, or are you trying to re-sign Sheldon Rankins? Like, what situationally would you do based on your pick is what I really want to know.
If it was up to me, I'd probably sign Sheldon Rankins and draft a corner. I think that being able to stop the run and be able to run the football are the two most important things you can do as a football team if you want to be able to control clock and do all the things that winning football teams do. Most winning football teams are able to stop the run and run the football. So Byron Murphy would be a steal in my opinion, but the highest graded dude on the board is a corner that could fill a need too.
No, yeah. I mean, I see your point. I think that logically, I like keeping Sheldon Rankins around. If I'm having to choose between him and Steven Nelson, so at that point, I would probably go corner too. So I'm not going to be the one to talk you off the ledge on that one.
I'm locking him in. He's also got good size too. I think he's 6'2".
All right. No, yeah. All right. Let's see. So with that in mind, I'm back here, uh, picking at 80, 85, and much like you said, there's a lot of players that I wouldn't expect to be available at this pick that are just still on the board, and players that I kind of, I don't know, I kind of expected to be available that I don't see. Like, I don't see Roman Wilson, I believe his name is. He from Michigan. I don't see him. And I would have expected him to be available here based off of what I know, what little I know so far. Um, and so looking at it, I'm not really looking. I don't think Brendan Rice is real. Brendan Rice could realistically be available at this pick. So, but between him and Malachi Corley, um, or I could go safety with Tyreek Smith. Um, I could go defensive tackle, or I could. There are a lot of people. There's this subsect of Texans Twitter that just really doesn't like the idea of taking Maris Leafau at linebacker because they're like, we already have Henry To'oTo'o and he's just not done much, which I think is a really strong stance to take on a player who was a 5th-round pick and had stepped in and played earlier than he probably should have due to injury, and also at one point was the leading tackler on the team. So I mean, I don't know, but all those feelings aside about that, this is that point where you'll probably see me buy into the Senior Bowl hype, and I'll go ahead and lock in the pick of Malachi Corley. Get a little help at the receiver position. He's not like he's taller than Tank Dell for sure. And let's look at his profile real quick just to get a feel. So his style of play, he's a slot receiver. We had talks about how Tank Dell can play outside, so I'm not exactly. I'd rather probably have her. Honestly, I don't think it's. I don't know if it's realistic, but I'd probably rather have Brendan Rice. I'm talking myself out of everything that I've decided so far as it happens, but Brendan Rice is standing 6'2". He's a classic outside X receiver. I think he better meets the needs that the Texans have. He's got that pedigree. You see right there is a picture of him with his dad, Jerry Rice, arguably the best wide receiver in NFL history. But I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much of an impact he immediately has, but something about his pedigree makes me want to believe that he could be really good in the NFL, especially with CJ Stroud throwing him the rock. So I'm going to lock in Brendan Rice. I changed my mind. I'm going to do that. What do you think?
I think it's a good pick. I totally cannot fault you for doing that. I just messed up my draft somehow, clicking on somebody's face. So I'm trying to fix it. But I think Brendan Rice is a really good pick. I think you should definitely lock that in. I don't see any issue with that. Again, I'm big on best available. So I feel like he probably fits that mold for the Texans. So can't hate that.
Uh-oh. It took you all the way back. Are you going to...
Yeah. I got to like fix it. And
I mean, the only way you can fix it is I think you just have to like start over and like make the picks to get you to
I'm going to try to.
The 4th round.
I'm going to try to.
So
but yeah, I clicked on the guy's face to like get his profile or whatever, and it just like immediately took me to some other page.
I'll tell you,
Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen.
It's all right. I really like this website, but there's points where I click it and I'm like, did I just lose my whole mock draft? Like, because I clicked the wrong button. And the navigation is strange. Oh, you still get Keon Coleman in the 1st round.
That one I could have got like crazy with it, but we'll see. Now I kind of am leaning based on the way this fell to taking Byron Murphy. All right, I guess.
Go ahead and do it.
Yeah, we were basically 50-50 on that.
Yeah, I mean, it was really about. There's moves that have yet to be made that would determine the viability of that happening.
So in
I
this scenario, I would have uh, I would have a hard time picking the best available right now because it's JJ McCarthy and Malachi Corley, and I started with Keon Coleman. I really had the better setup in the last one. Let's hope it works out that way. So going this way, I was looking at guard, and there was a guard that was available from Oklahoma. I can't remember his name at the moment, but I went to click on his face, and that's how we got sidetracked.
uh,
But I would think at the third round, if the best available is a guard, knowing that the offensive line had some issues, I was going to ask you what you thought. Would third round be too high, too rich for taking depth at guard?
I think that so what I did last week was I took Cooper Beebe here from Kansas State, and I would stand by that pick in the third round if he was there. Um, Simply put, and spoiler alert, if you haven't looked at Twitter yet, that once again this mock draft I'm talking about, I did a 3-round mock and I put him as my third round pick. I think that it what matters is looking at his scouting report and seeing how much he played left guard. Because
Mm.
if you're drafting a guard at that point, you're drafting insurance for if Kenyon Green is not ready to be that first round pick that we want him to be. So if you're drafting at that position, you're drafting under the pretense that one, Jarrett Patterson and Juice Scruggs is going to play center, and so Patterson could be your left guard, and he was pretty good at center at times, but you want to kind of improve there. So getting that third round pick in at left guard gives you more depth at that side. You're assuming that Jarrett Patterson's going to be the backup center. And so, yeah, you're just basically drafting your potential backup left guard, but it could also be your starter. So, yeah, I'm on board with it.
My thing is that I need Titus Howard at right tackle. Whatever
Oh,
does,
100%.
whatever gets him there. I really hope that was a thing because we had a surplus and he was a better guard than who we had at guard. But now that it looks like right tackle's opened up because George Fant's out the door, I think that needs to be Titus Howard, and I think he needs to be left alone.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Are you going to go with the left guard? Is it Christian Mahogany?
Christian Mahogany. Yeah, I think I'm gonna lock that in. I really thought about the corner because I went D line in the second round, but there's really good corner depth in the free agent market, and I think they can go get a corner, a veteran corner, so they're not really having two super young corners. I don't know. Some people want that. I kind of feel like you need a veteran guy. We'll see. So
All
I'm
right.
locking in Mahogany.
Lock it in. Do it. All right, we're back to me, and I am at the 123rd pick. This is a point where I'm kind of eyeing the running back market personally. I mean, I think that there's a lot of ways you could go safety or linebacker if you're trying to bolster up defense at this point. So of the running backs available, I mean, I don't know. I was pretty high on Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin, but he's more of a 5th-round pick at this point. Audric Estime out of Notre Dame is ranked entirely too high for me to believe that I could get him. So I'm going to explore Dylan Johnson out of Washington. Let's see, 6 foot, 218. Did not get a lot of run this past year. What happened? I got to look at his timeline. Says standout running back, began at Mississippi State. Let's see. At Washington, he became a dominant force. In a single season, he had 1,100 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns, matching his previous career total with Mississippi State. His remarkable year was highlighted by a 4-touchdown game against USC, and it underlines his capabilities as a workhorse back. So that's what I'm really looking for right there. I mean, he may have had an injury, it would appear, but let's see his summary. See, looking forward to his media impact will like be felt run heavy in a run heavy offense where he can use his power and vision to control game tempo. His receiving skills will also be an asset. Yeah, it seems like he's just what I'm looking for at this point in the draft is a guy who has shown potential in like a lot of facets as a running back and could fit what the Texans do, which they like to open with the run. They're I think he could be a fit. That's not from actual knowledge of the scheme that was run at Washington, but he seems versatile enough to fit what the Texans could need. So, I at this pick am going to go with Dylan Johnson. How do you feel? I know you said you weren't going to take a running back in the second round, but in the fourth round, what do you think?
Man, I can't see a scenario where they take a running back this early for the simple fact that you you're going to have your RB2 in my opinion. If they go out and make a move, you have your RB2. If they did nothing in the running back room and they brought no one in, then yes, I think this is a perfect place to pick. If you think that Damian Pierce is going to be the lead back and then you're looking to fill his backup role, but I gotta believe they're going to get somebody in here, a veteran running back, to take your RB3 in that early seems like a wasted pick to me.
So for me, this pick is made under the pretense that the Texans have signed a running back in free agency, like a Saquon Barkley, if you will, and this is made under the pretense that they want to give Damian Pierce competition, and so they're making this pick not because they think that this guy's RB3, but because they think this guy could be RB2, depending on how camp goes and how they feel about him. So that's why I make that pick personally. I don't think he's just a clear cut RB3. Could be. And it'd be a really high pick to spend on a running back that never sees the field or rarely does. But that's about where I'm at. So let's take a look at your mock draft. I'm going to pull it up.
So right
And
now, I've got a couple different ways I can go. Obviously, we haven't pulled a corner. I think they could pull a corner here. Chris Abrams Drain, that could be a pick. He's ranked right around that spot. If you think linebacker is a move they could make, Tyrese Knight, Tyrese, I don't know. Tyrese Knight out of UTEP could be the move, but I think right here's a spot where Miko gets an Alabama guy and he takes an edge rusher. This Justin Abojbi, I don't know if I'm saying that right or not. Probably murdering it. Looked him up.
probably I can't see it.
Fifth year senior. I think Alabama guy. Obviously, some teams just have affinity for their alma mater. You see Alabama guys throughout the Texans roster, and I think this could be a good pickup, an edge rusher. Obviously, we don't know what they're going to do opposite Will Anderson, but Will Anderson and this guy have played together, so there's going to be instant chemistry. I think that's where I'm going with my pick.
I mean, yeah, I could believe the bias towards the university, if you will. I mean, I don't know. I think that that's a solid pickup. I have no problem with it. I mean, the Eagles are basically trying to build Georgia up in Philly, so why not try and build Bama down in Houston? Let's see. I'm gonna
7 sacks as a fifth year senior is not anything to scoff at.
Not anything to not think about when you're making that pick. This is so tough. So like usually, this simulator is pretty close to ranking, so it's easier. So like I don't want to pick a guy that's clearly like not meant to be here based off the current rankings. He could end up being here. I mean, there's a lot of guys that happens to, but trying to kind of stay true to rankings. I'm looking over more in this area here, and the players that stick out to me are Cedric Gray and Jalix Hunt. So a safety / edge, that intrigues me enough to click on the profile for sure. Because safety / so it says his position is safety, but I guess maybe he played edge at one point. Let's see, safety. Yeah, I don't know why. That's the same thing with Cade Stover, where it like just confuses me to no end, trying to see what exactly he is or why they're showing that. But at the end of the day, I think, and I'm gonna look at Cedric Gray's profile. But I think for my final pick, I want to go linebacker to give D'Amico a fourth round pick type player to develop and work with. And so this is a multi linebacker or multi role linebacker, Cedric Gray out of North Carolina. There's also Jalen Ford out of Texas. But I'm gonna put my bias away because he's ranked 177th, so he is far from being in this round. Um, but looking, I mean, I don't know if 4.73 is super quick for a linebacker. Um, but let's look at his. Let's see. Do they have a summary written up about him? Let's look at his weaknesses. I like to look at people's weaknesses first. It kind of gives me a feel. He'll need to be covered up to be effective. He's not the kind of guy you can line up in a pass rush and have him bend the edge. He's limited to shooting through gaps. As a run defender, he's too much of a grab and drag tackler, lacking violence and too frequently allowing running backs to escape. That's not good. We don't like that one. But the Texans' run defense as a whole is really good, so I don't know if that's something that they can probably work on. I don't know if it's as big of a concern at this position. He's a guy who can be put on the edge every down and be expected to consistently create pressure, which seems to contradict needing cover because he can't, bend the edge, but that's neither here nor there. He has elite athletic skills, plays bigger than his listed size, and then he has an excellent feel for working off blockers. I think that a lot of that can be coached up, and he's the best rated linebacker at this position. So, I'm gonna go in that direction. Oh, or we could go with Christian McCaffrey's brother, Luke McCaffrey, QB Rice. Go ahead and get our third string quarterback, assuming that we don't keep Davis Mills.
I feel like with that name, he's got a good set of hands on him. If he wanted to be a wide receiver, something like that, could be an interesting pick. I think you'd see something like that, like in the 7th round or something.
Yeah. And then looking here real quick, so I took Jatavian Sanders in round 2, but one of the alternative paths that I could take in a mock draft in the future that I've been contemplating, another Senior Bowlism where I've seen people talking about him on the feed and I've watched and I'm like, okay, this guy's interesting. But Theo Johnson out of Penn State seems like an interesting prospect at the tight end position. So I could see it feels like it might be kind of a reach to go for him with our 2nd, 4th round pick, but I could see myself doing it if I felt like I needed to cover tight end and I wanted to go that route. But for my final pick, I'm gonna be going with Cedric Gray, linebacker, North Carolina. So let's see. And now I'll bring up yours and you can make your final pick, Tom. So what do you got going on?
So I really looked at the corners because I don't have a corner yet. And I think that they will draft a corner in this draft, whether it be as depth or as a starter, just depends on where they do it. I looked at the 2 corners that were available to me. The weaknesses, like you pointed out, you like to look at their weaknesses. There were really, really bad reviews. One was, a guy that was going to draw a lot of pass interference, too handsy. The other one had poor feet. So then I listened to you talk about them wanting to potentially get their hands on a linebacker. And this guy's still available for me. So he's a UTEP guy, 4.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. We go and we look at some of his weaknesses. Is in a hurry to get up the field, but shows poor instincts when locating the ball against the run. I think that's something you can coach up. I think something D'Amico can really kind of teach. How he feels about trying to teach some of these later round draft picks. So if you're going to get a linebacker, something where it's not a motor question, you know what I mean? It's not a work ethic question. Those are the guys I think would fit D'Amico and being able to just teach technique. So
that's why I like Cedric Gray was they said he's like a freak athlete. I'm like, okay, that's good.
But yeah, so this is the best available guy to me. I also looked at Tommy Eichenberg out of Ohio State. I want to say I remember that name in some of the bigger games. Ohio State was playing for potentially a national championship all the way up to the end. But in the end, I just took the best available guy, which was this guy, unless you could talk me off of that pick.
No, I mean, I think that it's important to get D'Amico a developmental linebacker of sorts. If you're not going to get him one early in the draft, so at that point, I don't feel like you reach a certain point in the draft where you're looking for a guy that you think could be really good, or that you think like is a good depth piece. You're not. I don't think it's like Brock Purdy's situation. Ideally, the guy becomes a starter. But like the 49ers didn't draft Brock Purdy and think, okay, this guy's going to be our quarterback. Like, but it could happen. So like I agree with you. We're looking for guys that show good effort. And another point that I want to bring up as we kind of come to the end of this, I'm going to bring us back down here. Oh shoot, let me see. There we go. I mean, if we look at last year's draft through the first 5 rounds, Nick Caserio, I think all but one of the players were team captains at their school. So I think that's something that looking forward, that's what I'm going to be looking at. Is I'm going to be looking for draft prospects that were team captains, because I think that's an attribute that Nick Caserio takes very seriously. And so, I mean, there are plenty of guys that are team captains at their school that are not, first, second, or third round talent that could eventually become like really good at the pro level. So that's what I'll be looking out for in the future. But Tom, do you have any final remarks about your mock draft, or the mock drafts in general, before we kind of bring this thing to a close?
I think we really tried to emulate what the coach speak that D'Amico Ryans has been using. I think your draft as well as mine had more defensive than offensive players. I really feel like that's the direction the draft is going to go. We'll see. I mean, this could all be moot. They could make a lot of picks, or trade a lot of picks and then get draft capital for the following season. Just decide that they're going to make their moves in free agency, something like that. But if they don't make any moves, I feel like it's going to be leaned a little heavier to the defensive side of the ball. And I think we did a really good job of capturing that.
Yeah, I mean, mine was 2 defensive players, 3 offensive players. But
Yeah,
I
but
think
you have that one running back that makes no sense.
we could argue back and forth about that. We both have very different opinions on the issues with the Texans run game, but I'm confident. Now, what I'd like to see is maybe a little bit later. There's a guy, but like just for the sake of this draft to get it out there, I put him in or Dylan Johnson in there, but Braylon Allen is a 5th round pick projected, and if we expand out to the 5th round, he'll probably show up in quite a few of my mock drafts. But my final thoughts are I agree with you that defense is the focus. I mean, I feel like putting for me, even though more players were offense, my highest pick was a cornerback that I expect to immediately contribute. And looking at my mock draft of the players that I drafted, I'd say that 2 fringe 3 are expected to be starters. I'm just going to go with 2. So Jatavian Sanders and Kamari Lassiter. So 50-50 split on addressing that. But I do think it's important that the Texans give CJ Stroud weapons. But it's going to be interesting to see with D'Amico being the head coach if that's how they approach it. So with that in mind, thanks for tuning in. As always on the Bullpen, at least through draft day, it's mock draft Monday, free agent Friday. So tune in for those. That's the plan. I mean, that's what we got going on. I can be found on social media at M1 Texans fan. And Tom can be found at Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And that is, once again, I'm going to keep spreading this rumor every episode until it happens or it doesn't. But Tom is rumored to be in possession of an Instagram account, but he's not gone public with it yet. So that's just, some breaking news, or I should say an update on the news that I broke a few episodes ago about Tom's social media presence. Tom, do you care to comment?
Next question.
Is it? I'm only here so I don't get fined. All right. Well, it's been real. It's been fun. As always, stay classy, Houston. And until next time, Vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.
Pick the handoff. Stroud